Hey everybody, PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PBSE podcast. Steve Moore and Mark Castleman here, and we are here addressing episode 319 and a submission that comes to us from a partner of the addict partner, actually, in a relationship that has actually ended. So a little bit of a different dynamic today, and as you can see from the title, it's not something, I don't think we've covered this maybe in a little bit, as part of a sidebar on other podcasts, but he brought up a really good question that we wanted to address. When sexual betrayal is confessed, what are healthy boundaries for the partner and addict going forward afterwards? Okay, now this couple specifically was a couple, the way we understand it, who were engaged or otherwise committed to be in a long-term marriage or partnership. And before that was finalized, what you were going to read here kind of took place. So here we go. And this is what he says. Hello, and thank you for the work you do on the PBC podcast. It has helped me a lot. I understand that your conversations are typically directed towards married couples, but I hope the principles can still be applied to someone discerning a future marriage or considering a future marriage. I was in a serious relationship for about 7 months in which I fell back into pornography. I did not tell her immediately, since our relationship felt strained at the time. Now, that's a key piece that we'll come back to, and didn't want to add a huge emotional weight to it. I instead opted to wait until we got to a more steady place emotionally. After feeling closer with her, I opened up more and I confessed to her about what had occurred during our relationship, and she decided to break up with me a few days later because she said that she felt like she couldn't trust me. I take full responsibility for my failure and the hurt I caused her. Since the breakup, I have confessed my struggle with my family, have found accountability partners, listened to podcasts like PBSC and others, and have actively made steps towards rooting out my addiction. The issue that I'm struggling with now is not the breakup itself, but what has followed it. Our lives are strongly intertwined, and we constantly share close proximity, yet she has chosen to treat me like a stranger. While I can fully understand that confession does not obligate someone to stay in a relationship, I cannot help but also feel, help but feeling betrayed by how she left after I became fully vulnerable with her in order to build a stronger relational connection without secrets. I wish to paint a clear picture that includes my failures, but also places where we as a couple could have drawn closer through the hardship. So, my main questions are: how can someone gauge when to tell a partner about their struggles, especially after failing within the relationship? When pornography has damaged trust, what do healthy boundaries look like for the offended party? And finally, if quote unquote no is the response to confession, meaning they want to end the relationship, how can one move forward with humility and integrity despite the heartache? Thank you very much for the work you do.
Yeah, it's
Great
great.
submission.
Great submission. You
Really
know,
appreciate the
yeah, great
vulnerability.
submission. And we know that we purposely chose the title because we knew it would raise some eyebrows. Like when sexual betrayal is confessed, what are healthy boundaries for the partner and addict? Well, an addict doesn't have a right to any boundaries with regard to the partner he's betrayed. What do you mean his
Because
boundaries?
he's just an addict, you know?
So
So,
we'll get into what we mean by that. So please stay with us.
yeah, no, because there are absolutely, it's a great discussion to have
Is
because there is a lot of moving parts in this relationship, and it does open up a dialogue that can be relatable not only to unmarried or non-committed couples, because that does shift some things, admittedly, but also what we talk about today can very much be applied to committed relationships as well.
absolutely.
So,
So Steve, I'll tell you, we're going to address the betrayed partner first, and then we'll address the addict second. But
yeah.
first, we've had this asked of us lots of times over our whole careers actually, where a partner has said, my boyfriend or my fiance betrayed me and lied. Should I run? Should I like run, head for the hills? Or should I or is there another approach that would be authentic or healthy? We get asked that a lot.
Mm, yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute. If someone is in her position, what should you do?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, and we want to cover some general topics here. But I also did want to speak a little bit about this dynamic specifically since this guy wrote into us because the situation is a little more complicated than just a simple, you know, discussion about the pressures involved in this because of their specific situation. But we'll come back to that. So for any betrayed partner, right, who finds out about something like this, particularly in the early stages of a relationship, it really, in regards to what boundaries should be had, I mean, to be candid, it really kind of depends on how the betrayed partner envisions a future relationship with the betrayer, right? They'll always have a relationship of some sort, but that could be very distant or almost non-existent to connected and wanting to try again and anything in between, right? So I think a betrayed partner in this situation, very similar to one that was in a committed partnership, because they have to make the same decision, is knowing these factors and knowing and given the betrayal, given the lack of trust, given everything else at play, what feels most authentic for me at this point in time,
Well,
right?
and in his submission, he says I felt a bit of betrayal because I actually got honest and vulnerable and shared myself, and she basically took that and shut off the whole relationship. I felt just as we had an opportunity to really go deep as a coupleship, she ended it.
Yeah.
And you can understand where he's coming from with that. But Steve, you and I have had this is a very difficult conversation that you and I have had with many betrayed partners. I just had one not too long ago where he was caught The addict partner is typically caught or found out. It all comes out into the open, and a betrayed partner has to look at that. And then she asked me, Mark, what is the hope going forward in regard to this relationship? Do I have guarantees? Will he betray me again? Do I know he's telling the whole truth at this point in time? And Steve, you and I have to have very hard conversations with partners where we say, you need to understand that this relationship has forever changed. Now that you know that if you go forward, you will be in a relationship with an addict for the rest of your lives. And that doesn't mean he can't be healthy, recovered, sober, an awesome guy. He could actually grow to be more than he was previously because and through the addiction. But nonetheless, you are married to an addict. Yeah. And that takes on certain meanings. And knowing everything that means, do you want to go forward with this relationship? And sometimes partners look at us and say, no, I don't. Now, quite a few times they say, well, yes, I'm at least willing to try and give it some time to see what happens. But that's a tough reality to talk with these partners about.
It is. And when you're talking about here's just the practical reality for any partner, regardless of time in the relationship, right? That one has to consider, right? There are a variety of factors involved. Time in the relationship and in the capacity for getting out of it is a factor, right? There are different considerations in a committed partnership, legally and otherwise, as opposed to one that has not yet reached that point. But there are also many other factors as well, right? For example, there is usually at a stage like this. I remember being engaged to my wife and not even dealing with this side of the dynamic because I had been honest with her. But even without that, man, the amount of drama that surrounded our engagement with her family and mine, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's just, it's just crazy. It was like the Capulets and the other family, getting together in some ways. And there were lots of things on both sides that were kind of putting pressure on in different ways about what to do in a relationship, even when we weren't even considering changing it. Things like family dynamics, for example, pressure from parents and siblings, right? Existing relationships with the person potentially coming into the family the pressure can be huge one way or the other with regard to this, right? If they really like him, and Mark and I have heard both things in our office, just give him a chance. Nobody's perfect. Why are you walking away from such an awesome opportunity? I'm your dad. You're not going to find anybody better, but they can be pressure that way. Mm-hmm. Or it can be the other side. I knew it. I knew that guy was not good enough for my daughter. No one ever will be. Bail on this thing. Kick that guy to the curb like a dead raccoon. Like, this is done, Yeah.
Go either way.
And everything in between, right? And it doesn't even just go that far. Cultivated relationships with the betrayed partner's family in social media circles, right?
He's describing that he says we're in close proximity on a regular basis.
Yeah, she's closely if she or he is closely connected with the other family members, right? That can be a huge pressure because
work colleagues or common friends or
Right? I remember one partner who was in a marriage, who's at least one, but one specifically, who brought this exact concern to me. If we don't end up together, I love his family.
Yes.
I don't have connections with my family of origin. Like, his family has kind of become my family. Mm-hmm. And if we end this marriage, well, obviously they're going to side with their kin. Like, what does that mean? It's I would be divorcing my whole family, right? So that's a really complicated dynamic.
Hey everybody, PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
There's, if they're engaged or involved with each other financially, or they get tied together financially, that can create all kinds of pressure. And then a huge one for betrayed partners, internal insecurities or fears about future partners or the lack thereof. What if I don't find anybody else? What does this say about me if I couldn't even work this out? Yeah, they can just fire off your internal insecurities and challenging your worth. Big.
The early part of my career, I worked. I for some reason I remember I had a string of clients. I was actually just wrapping up my time in school, so I was on the verge of becoming fully licensed, and so I was practicing under a supervisor. And I had a string of single women in their mid-20s to early 30s that all showed up in my office, kind of 4 or 5 of them over the course of a few weeks. And their stories in many ways were very similar. They were very, by all standards, very put together, college educated, had a lot going on for them, were very confident and very personable. They would come into my office, we'd close the door, and they would absolutely break down in tears. Because they came from a very religious culture with very heavy ideas, let's say, about marriage and when that should happen. And I had more than one of these women say, I'm 30-something, I'm not married, my life is over. What do I have to offer? Right? Yeah. And that's a terrible tragedy, but that is a reality that many deal with from the cultural background or the family upbringing that they may come from. And so pressures like that become involved. Well, if I end this, what if no one else comes along? What does that mean? So lots and lots of pieces to that. And then, of course, that we just talked about the cultural and religious side. So there's a lot, and balancing all of those factors with one's own internal authenticity is critical, but difficult. And what I would say for most partners in this situation, what is a fair ask, regardless of the scenario, is at baseline to ask for a break.
Absolutely.
Like, I need to step away from all of these pressures and all these voices, because we didn't even talk about the pressure from the guy, from the betraying partner. Don't leave. I'll change. I'll be better. What's wrong with you? You can't even forgive me for this one thing, right? I mean, and there needs to be, at least at a minimum, I would say, some sort of a timed break that says, I need to get away from all these voices, and I need to figure out what this betrayal means to me, and what that, in context with everything else going on, what that means in the bigger context of this relationship going forward.
Yep. And the bigger context of my life.
Yes.
What capacities do I have to go forward, or if at all, right? What does all this mean? I need to go talk to people and get better informed and educated about what all this means, because I don't know. Yeah. All I know is you gaslit and lied to me for 7 months.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, Mark, because that's the other piece I wanted to address briefly before we shift gears to the addict side, because we're going to talk about those during this as well. This particular dynamic includes not uncommon, but a wrinkle in the sauce that needs to be talked about here, because it could be really easy for somebody listening, if you weren't paying attention, to just say, geez, he came out, let her know about some weaknesses, and so she's just out. He's very candid about the fact that the relationship was already under a considerable amount of strain.
True.
And he deliberately waited to tell her information until he knew, till a time when he felt the relationship would be stronger and better able to wear that. Now, while we can connect with the logic of that, we can name that a lot of things, but there is a seriously strong element of emotional manipulation there, intentional or not,
Absolutely.
right? Where she is being withheld from critical information because he's waiting until she's in a certain place, quote unquote, to be able to share that. So, addressing one of his questions right out the gate, when is the time to share difficulties in a relationship when they come up? Right now.
Well, that's the first question we have from the side of him.
Yes.
And in the title, when we said boundaries that he has, these are very much boundaries that we encourage addicts or the betrayer, boundaries for you to establish within yourself. We're not talking about you putting boundaries on your betrayed partner. Boundaries for you. How are
Yes.
you going to live a boundaried life within your own conscience, within your own mind, your own value system? And one of those, Steve, and I know oh my gosh, let me tell you, I know how difficult it is. How does an addict gauge when to tell a partner about his struggles? Better to wait until the relationship is more emotionally stable, where you're closer, right? And I adhered to that philosophy for years. It was 15 years before I told my wife the whole truth. I was waiting until the quote conditions were right for what? So that she would receive it better, so that there was a better chance that we would hold the relationship together, so that I wouldn't be seen as so worthless and such a gaslighting little whatever. I was trying to control and put conditions on when and how truth is told. And we are notorious for doing that in addiction as guys, right? Controlling the trickling out of truth, controlling how and when it's presented, how much is presented, how much is not presented, all to do what? To control people's reactions, to control how I'm perceived, to control the consequences and whether I'm liked or not liked. So, Steve, you and I talk about total honesty at all, the word all underlined with 27 underlines, total honesty at all costs.
Yes.
But that's a noble idea. But what about in real life with real consequences?
Yeah.
Right?
There is.
And we've had
Uh,
guys challenge us. You mean at all costs? But you don't understand.
yeah,
There's
and
this,
that's
and
what I
there's
was going
this,
to
and there's
say.
this, and there's this.
I mean, I will say this because I rarely do we issue, what's that quote from Star Wars? Ultimatums are the sign of a Sith Lord, right? Oh, Sith, only Siths deal in absolutes,
Only
right?
Sith
And
words.
so this is not an absolute. It doesn't cover every situation, but I would say that if you're going to break the rule that I'm going to describe, you need to consult with a CSAT certified or other uh, specially trained professional in relationships in these issues before you break what we say. With very rare exception, except where self-harm or a few other things might come into play on the part of the other person. You are not doing any favors, or nor are you acting in the best interests of your relationship, either for yourself or for the other person, by withholding critical information regarding acting out behaviors or enacting out history. If that needs to be, if due to the nature of it needs to be done in a formal disclosure format, fine. Then your immediate duty is then to go to your partner and say, there are things that we need to talk about. I have been very dishonest with. I'm choosing to trust what Mark and Steve on this podcast are saying. I'm reaching out to a therapist today, right now, so that I can meet with them and figure out what, if any, you need to know right now, so I can get ready to be able to actually fully go over this with you. So if there needs to be a formal piece of that, then so be it. But that's not an excuse to wait. It's not an excuse to stop. And it's certainly not an excuse to continue going on gaslighting your partner, because that's what it is, pretending that things are fine when they are not. Inevitably, what you will find is what this man found the hard way. is that because even though she may not have labeled it as gaslighting, we haven't heard from her at all. People don't need to know that definition to not feel it in their heart.
Yeah.
Nobody, and rightfully so, should tolerate emotional manipulation in a relationship. If I feel like my partner is not partnering with me and they are trying to move me along like a puppet, that is a problem. Now,
Yeah.
again, that may not have been his intention, and I'm not saying that it is, but regardless of whether it's the intention, it is still the outcome.
It
And
is.
it's simply just not okay. And relationships are contingent on transparency and how willing we are to disclose. It does not matter how and in what other ways you are close with a person. You could kill every flower in Brazil for your partner and ship them to them. And I tried once upon a time with my partner, so speaking from experience, to try to compensate for that kind of manipulation. It won't work, and it shouldn't
Well,
work.
and he learned the hard way. What was it that likely killed the relationship? Very possibly not just the fact of his acting out with pornography, but the fact that he lied for 7 months.
Exactly. They're working on other issues. They're putting in all this effort. She's investing more and more to try to work on it, and they're not even working on the full or the real full issues.
And he's asking her to choose him and without being fully informed about her choice because
Correct.
he's not showing his whole self to her. We call that integrity abuse,
Yes.
right? It's using the assumption of integrity in order to manipulate a relationship forward when you've abused that integrity.
We are
That's
portraying what Dr. Manuel calls that IAR, right? That is, or
yep,
IMR, intentionally manipulated reality to a
intentionally
partner,
manipulated reality.
or
Exactly.
intentionally altered reality, rather.
Yeah.
So it's
And
important that we recognize that for what it is. Again, we're not saying he's a bad man. We can connect as addicts in recovery why some of the logic may have made sense at the
oh my
time,
gosh,
but that still does not make it okay.
no, yeah, explanations they don't excuse impact.
No.
Now, one of the things, guys, every person listening needs to understand about the fact that he was waiting for the right time to let the truth out. He was doling it out in little chunks. What's the problem with that psychologically as with regard to trust and trauma? When we dole out the truth, when we try to control the stream of truth in order for our partner to be in a better place or not take it so hard, or if I give this side of it first, then the other side of it will be more received. We're making what I would call serial withdrawals. In other words, regular withdrawals from that relationship trust account. Withdrawal after withdrawal, hit after hit to that trust account. And then what does that create for the betrayed partner? Even though they don't know that it's happening, I promise you they're feeling something's up. But when they find out what actually was going on the whole time, now we have this crazy thing called complex trauma. Layer upon layer upon layer over time. Because he waited, he had those serial withdrawals, regular withdrawals from the trust account. And because he waited, he created an environment of complex trauma for his partner. If he had just come out with it, it would have been a single trauma hit. But he lengthened it out over and over and over again. And complex trauma is brutal with regard to betrayed partners. Many,
100%.
they just can't come back from it.
100%. So
Yeah.
as we shift gears and we kind of wrap up here and we move to the other side, right? Um, I mean, we talked about the honesty at all costs piece, right? We've
Yep.
talked about that internal integrity. Um, what if no is the response to total honesty? What if the rejection occurs?
Yeah, I told her the truth and it was over.
Yeah.
Now what?
And that is an unfortunate outcome, right? And unfortunately, in a situation like that, I just recently facilitated a formal disclosure with an addict and a partner. And there were a lot of elements involved in preparing for that. And one of those was a conversation that I have with most of the guys that I'm helping to get ready for a formal disclosure, because this inevitably comes up, right? What if I go through this whole process? I do all this work, I put myself out there, I do everything, and then it doesn't end up working.
Yeah.
And I'm always honest with those guys. Relationships and intimacy are always a risk. There are never guarantees for addicts or partners in this process. We've never reported that on this program. We don't do that in our D2C program for addict spouses and couples. God knows our program, among other options, can give you great chances at making it, but there are never guarantees on that. But what we can say, and speaking as an addicts in recovery, is that at the end of the day, we all answer to the man in the mirror, right? And my job, if I'm really examining my authentic self on my journey on this blue marble, is obviously I want to pursue relationships with others. But Mark and I think every addict has to come to that reality, going back to what Mark said about honesty at all costs. We all hit a point where our authenticity hits such, or lack thereof, hits such a critical mass that we find ourselves saying what I said one day, which is I'd rather be disliked or even hated for who I'm not or for who I am than liked for who I'm not. I just can't. Living fake compromises relationships, and I'd rather that it, as much as I could lie or manipulate in order to keep my partner around, that also comes at the cost of them not only hurting them in all sorts of ways that we've talked about today, but I'll never be able to be fully chosen. The minute I make a decision to engage in that kind of manipulation, my capacity to internalize compliments, affirmations, love in general, support, anything else in a relationship that makes relationships worth it is compromised, because it will always be coated over with this lens of, well, she's saying that because she doesn't know the real me. She's affirming me, he's affirming me, they're affirming me because they're in love with, or they connect with, or they're appreciating what? A fantasy.
And that's what finally got me into the first stages of recovery, is I lived that way, Steve, for 15 years of my marriage.
And with me.
Because I said, if my wife only knew, she would never accept me. Yeah, she's expressing appreciation right now, but she doesn't mean it because she doesn't know me. And I continued out of fear to continue to manipulate that relationship to keep her here.
Yes.
The whole time I knew inside that I was being duplicitous.
So out of trying to create a relationship in which we can finally be loved and chosen for who we are, by making such a decision from a place of fear, we, by definition, make it impossible to achieve the very thing we want.
Prevent the very thing we say we want.
Yep.
And what do we ask, guys? You know, Steve, we could do a whole episode on the external outside motivations that have brought guys into our clinics to get into recovery. Right?
Yeah.
All the external motivations. How many guys have we brought when we used to do physical groups, sitting in the chair with his arm folded with a real attitude on his face because his wife just said, you either go to that group or I'm divorcing you tomorrow. So he comes and plops in the chair and he's got his arms folded with a defiant look. And our attitude was, hey, whatever got you here, got you here. But while you might be motivated from external things like your partner at first, Steve, I don't think we've ever seen a guy be successful over a couple of decades who didn't eventually get to the place where he was internally motivated to be in recovery, to live healthily, to move into his higher, better self. As long as it stays purely external from force or fear or compliance, you're not going to make it long term.
No, and again, you'll never have the relationship that you always wanted.
No.
Being in a relationship with someone is almost intolerable the more authentic you become, speaking from experience, when you're with somebody who loves you and cares about you, but you're not able to, again, internalize that because you're not being you. And
Yeah,
you know it,
and
they
fake.
don't.
No, it's fake and they don't know.
It just is impossible.
And this guy says, well, what do I do? In fact, he says, if no is the response to my total honesty, how does the addict move forward with humility and integrity despite the heartache?
Well, and my first response to that is the finishing to the statement to the guy that I said to this gentleman that I'm navigating a formal just navigated a formal disclosure with. This process, regardless of the outcome, will prepare you and help you along in your journey to become the best possible man and partner possible, whether it's for this relationship or for the next one.
And if you don't go through all of this in the way that we're talking about, and you keep using your old deception tactics, you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes in the next relationship.
And just as tragically, if not more so, leave more damage and more betrayal in other people's hearts along the way.
Correct. Yep. So can I say one last thing as we close up? And this is going to sound really weird to people. Heartache can be an amazing teacher if you don't simply allow it to lead to hopelessness or shame or apathy. If you let heartache, as you grieve it, as you move through it, let it motivate you in all the positive ways to move forward.
Absolutely. 100%. Guys, we love you. We care about you. Thank you for, as always, patronizing our podcast. If you love Dare to Connect or the BBC podcast, you will love D2C as always. We'd love to have you come join us and grab a 2-week free trial at daretoconnectnow.com. And you can come see what the excitement's about. We hope that you'll come join us and take recovery to the next level. For those who are looking to send in submissions to the podcast, you can also do that at the same website, daretoconnectnow.com. Click on the PBSC podcast logo up at the top, and that will take you to a contact form where you can send those in to us.
Yeah, we're about 3 or 4 weeks behind. We'll get to that when we can, or if you come and join D2C for two free weeks, you can get them answered right away.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Take care.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.